Thank you for participating in this People Assembly with the title Bitcoin, System Change or Climate Change, but in the little check-in that the four moderators or the two experts and two moderators had a little bit before the call. Kris already said, Bitcoin, no, go to blockchain technologies, right? So probably, I hope I can remember that because I'm not an expert at all. I will try to remember referring to it as blockchain technologies. We picked this topic because we sensed a lot of growing polarities on this topic. In media, on Facebook, on Twitter, there's a growing gap between believers and haters. And most of all, the reason why we organized this is because we're very curious, and we're very curious towards other perspectives, to hear people's voices for real on the topic, to stay open-minded and connected, as opposed to just reading Facebook posts and short tweets, right? So we felt like, hey, let's connect on this topic. Let's hear real people talk about it, real stories behind it. So we are very happy to have you all here doing this research with us for the next 2 hours at least. And we want to fully embrace the diversity in this group. The diversity is visible and invisible. I see a lot of men, welcome to them. I see a few women, welcome to them. Welcome also to non-binary people, to parents, to students, to married people, non-married people, people in family situations, single people, people in relationships, complex or simple. Welcome to people who feel comfortable in Zoom, who are less comfortable or just very tired of them. Welcome to people who feel comfortable in English and to people who don't. We welcome all cultural backgrounds, all roots, and all life and work experience that can play a part in this conversation tonight. Welcome to people who feel wise on the topic and know a lot. And welcome to people that, that are just here because they want to learn and are a bit nervous about it. We are very aware of how influenced our voices and opinions are by the context and the system we live in, by family situations or whatever. So we are aware of that. And this is a way to get access to other people's voices and other people's context, access to information. To set a bit this rule, and then I'm going to shut up before people start doing like this. To set a bit of this space, we would like to invite everyone to listen with an open mind today, to be here in order to learn, discover something you didn't know before. And I'm going to check in the checkout. What was it today that you've learned today? We encourage curiosity towards each other, and we welcome respectful opinions. We do not believe in a monopoly of the truth, but we believe in connection when we keep sharing and talking about stuff. So these are the 3 rules for today. There is no monopoly on the truth. We are here to learn, and we are here to stay connected. I'm gonna put them in the chat also, so that you can remind yourself from time to time. On the agenda for today, we listen first for half an hour to Xavier interviewing Kris and Tuur. Kris and Tuur are the 2 experts for tonight that we invited, and they're going to introduce themselves in a minute. After that, we break out into smaller groups. We have a plenary, again a breakout group, and a plenary to end and a checkout. So that's the program for tonight. After the interview, I will share a Google Doc where we will build the summary together. Okay. And any questions towards whatever, you can post in the chat. Okay. Are there any questions on technicalities? Anything that you've missed? No. Xavier, then the word is to you.
Thank you, Lane, and thank you, everyone. So without further ado, I want to introduce the 2 experts. So thank you very much, Kris and Tuur, for spending the time with us tonight. It's really great to have fellow Belgians, actually, who are in the space. And maybe as a first way to introduce you, I would love to ask you the first question, which is just, can you tell us, like, who are you? as citizens, really, and how did you get into the crypto space? Like what happened to you? So maybe Kris, if you want to start.
Sure. Yeah. So I started working in this crazy crypto space about 4 years ago now, and how did that happen? Well, before this, I was working. Well, mostly in everything that has to do with communication marketing. So I worked first in advertising, then I worked at Microsoft, then I worked at social media startups. So I was like always in marketing and communication jobs. It was always linked to technology. So it always already fascinated me. But my issue was that I never it was never really aligned with my values. That's the thing that I always discovered after a while, that I saw like, oh, okay, so I thought I was doing marketing for a specific product so that people would get this information, but in the end it was clear that the most important thing was never the customer, it was the shareholder. And it was the idea of like extracting money and bringing more money to the people who are actually not really contributing anything. And that made no sense to me whatsoever. So then at one point, I just had a friend who I used to work with who came over, and I had heard from Bitcoin before, but I didn't really grasp it. And then one evening he just came over and he talked for an entire evening about it. And suddenly I was like, it clicked. I was like, oh, okay. So it's like some sort of like decentralized money and nobody owns it and nobody can stop it. And I was fascinated about what this technology could bring. And so I started like just reading up and reading and reading. And like less than a week later, I was working in the space. And so I worked for a decentralized commerce platform. I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. It was really interesting. Yeah.
So what
sure.
got you into the space was kind of getting out of the old model of working for a for-profit company. And so you saw into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, like the ability to have a new model. And so that's kind of a couple of 4 or 5 years ago. Tuur, what about you?
Yeah, so it's been 10 years. I was just looking at the calendar. I think it was April 2011 that I first learned about Bitcoin. And I guess my background, I think is relevant. My parent, I grew up in Bruges, but my parents took us traveling. As a little kid, I would be like walking around Hungary and Poland and Russia and Turkey, and like, you know, in hindsight, a lot of countries that actually did have financial problems and problems with inflation. And so fast forward to like 2005, I started really getting into economics, learning about Austrian economics, Ludwig von Mises, etc. And I had some friends who were into that too. But then a few years later, I was like, how do I don't know. I don't want to be, I was starting to feel afraid for, you know, problems in the economy and especially inflation down the road. I was starting to feel worried about that in Europe. And so I started to try and apply the theory that I had learned to like something more practical. And so eventually I became a writer for a financial newsletter. So I'd like given not really investment advice, but basically tell people what I learned and what I'm doing, and then they could copy it if they wanted to. And so then in 2011, I learned about Bitcoin. Because before that, I was very much more into gold. I was just trying to find something that could serve as money, that was finite, that was scarce, that you cannot just manipulate, just like you can with euros and dollars. You can always print more. And so, yeah, I was in Argentina and in Buenos Aires visiting friends, and they told me about Bitcoin. And then maybe relevant for this panel too is in summer 2013, I became a small investor in one of the first Bitcoin mining companies. So I kind of, you know, saw behind the scenes what, you know, how things work. And then over the years, I've published several reports on you know, the space and how I see Bitcoin relating to the other cryptocurrencies, and how I see Bitcoin relating to like macro assets like the dollar or gold. So that's been kind of my specialty.
Great. So for you, it was more like the aspect of the risk of inflation, basically, of existing currencies that are being printed by governments, and you saw into Bitcoin like a way out of that.
I was very scared. scared. Yeah, I was very scared and worried. And I still am, but I feel much more, you know, like we have a shadow economy now. Like we actually have a backup system that we can lean on if things get, you know, they're already bad, but if they get worse from here.
So I wanted to ask, because like the topic of today also is about the climate emergency, right? And there's been a lot of polarities now about those cryptocurrencies, because we are at the same time in a climate emergency where we drastically need to reduce our CO2 emissions. And at the same time, people, you know, we see that all of that new world of blockchain is actually using a lot of energy. Right. So maybe, I don't know, Tuur, since you said that you've invested actually in being part of the a mining farm, can you maybe tell us first, like, what is it really about? Like, how come does Bitcoin needs to use so much energy?
Yeah, so the challenge with the digital currency, because like if you have physical money, then the scarcity just comes from you can only pull so much out of the ground. But if you have digital money, the challenge is how do we protect it? And so the initial idea that you can have is like, well, you know, we're going to validate the transactions by letting everybody vote. And so whoever runs the software on their PC, one IP address, one vote, everybody gets to vote about what is a legitimate transaction and what is a fraudulent transaction that we don't want. But the problem is you can just create IP addresses out of thin air. I can create a million IP addresses and vote. So basically there's all these attack problems with voting systems. And so like voting systems, it's basically a very broad category of solutions. It's politics, right? So if you think about it, fiat money like the dollar, the euro, they are based on voting systems. They are based on just people sitting together, casting a vote, and it can go well for a while, but eventually always something goes wrong and things get off the rails, and you cannot put them back on the rails. We've seen that over and over with fiat money. And so the innovation of Bitcoin is to come up with this proof of work mechanism whereby you can't just fake votes. You actually have to put in work to have a little say in the network, and that is what mining is. So mining is you solve all these, you make all these calculations, and that gives you a little piece of the pie, basically a percentage-wise chance to validate one block. Every 10 minutes, there's a new block of transactions, and then the system automatically will reward you for that. And so the nice thing is that you put in work to validate the transactions, but you don't control the rules. You cannot change the rules of the software. If you try, you just disconnect from the Bitcoin network and nobody talks to you. It's just like you if you disagree with the constitution, you have to go live in another country kind of thing. And so the way to think about Bitcoin mining and the energy it expends, in my mind, is like a firewall. And the more energy you expend, it means the bigger the firewall is for an external attacker to try and destabilize the system. And so like you can like quip and saying like, oh, Bitcoin uses 1% of the world's energy, that's bad. But the other way to look at it is that if you wanted to attack the Bitcoin system, you would need to spend, and I'm not, this is just made up this number, but you would need to have 1% of the world's energy to even try and attack it temporarily. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I look at mining.
And so how do you reconcile that? So we understand why then it requires so much energy. Now, how do you reconcile that with the fact that right now, probably our number one priority for our generation is to actually reduce our consumption, reduce our ecological impact?
Sure, yeah. Well, so the way I look at it is that fiat systems, political systems also come with costs, except that the difference is those costs are more hidden. Um, like if you to defend the dollar, like we know, you know, the petrodollar is not just made up. Like it's true. Like, you know, the US government has forced other countries to transact for all their oil transactions with the dollar, and they won't be hesitant to start a war in order to enforce those kind of things. So there's this enormous machinery of things that do cost and that do produce and expel energy, but it's less efficient. The same with if you think about you know, the gold standard, you know, you have to mine the gold, you have to cast it into bars, you have to refine it, you have to store it somewhere safely, then you need to pay all the guards and all the systems that are going to keep that gold safe. It's similar with fiat, but it's more dispersed and it's harder to identify. But so in my mind, this is just a different way of using energy. It's in the long run, it's more efficient, more reliable. Like think about the cost of an economy blowing up if you have inflation. Like look at Venezuela. What is the pollution happening in that country just because the government happened to have destroyed the currency? It's a tremendous cost. Like all this disruption, people trying to build up their. Eventually, people just start chopping down the trees and burning them because they don't have any modern means anymore to access the economy. So I guess that's what probably today what I want to do is just encourage people about looking at the hidden costs of the existing system rather than just looking at Bitcoin and seeing this like, oh my God, it uses as much energy as Denmark. Like, well, wait, like and then let's also break that down. Like, how is that energy exactly used? Is it just burning up oil that people are doing to make Bitcoin, or are there other ways? I feel like that's kind of why I'm here.
Great. So we can get back to that a bit later, but I want to give the mic back to Kris. How do you look at this? And so it's been like 4 or 5 years that you're into the space. Has your view changed on that, on the energy consumption, and also like how do you reconcile that for you personally with being with the climate emergency?
Yeah, well, I think the climate emergency is definitely real, and I think a very important point is just in general also to realize that the media is only focusing right now on that fact. Like Bitcoin the price is volatile and it's bad for the environment, and it's so limiting the view and already like turning many people off and not looking beyond that fact. I think it is a reality that blockchain mining pollutes. I think there's total agreement on this, but as Tuur said, there's so much else that is also polluting. And what is the interesting thing about blockchain technology is that you can make a lot of change in the world that in the long term is really can bring a lot of good things in the world. And so with blockchains, you can bring, well, just if you go back to, because I don't know how informed most of the people are about what blockchain actually is capable of, but some of the aspects are that you cannot really stop it. It's not on one centralized server. As Tuur said, it's really decentralized. So you can, it's this shadow economy, but it's also a complete shadow system or a decentralized system. So you cannot stop it. So governments cannot stop it. Companies cannot stop it. Nobody can stop it. That's already in itself something very interesting, and that is revolutionary. Something like this has never existed. Another thing is that it's fully transparent. You can trace all the transactions, so you can really see whatever happens. So if you now think about the bigger concept of, okay, if you think about activism or about climate change, okay, we want to really bring a change when it comes to this. I think many of the people working in this space are actually activists. They're not just in there because they want to get rich quick. They're actually the people who are at the bases, the developers, the people working in that space are there because they see that the current system is totally broken and we need to have this backup system. And that's what they're building. So it is about money. Money is a first use case. And I think that is an important one to mention. I've mentioned it a few times in the past to people, is like right now, we're actually using this, the system of money against the system, because right now what is like ruling the world, it's the economy. Well, let's build a new economy, and let's not just like fight with demonstrating, etc., because we've seen it's great, but it doesn't really make a difference. But if you now empower people with well, money, first of all, empower them by like distributing the money more equally, but also by giving them a technology that is unstoppable, that is transparent, and that can be used for many, many things. So I can go into many use cases like how that actually could work, but I don't know if it's for now or for later.
Yeah, but maybe one point that we can talk about is that indeed, like a big difference between Bitcoin and existing fiat currencies like the euro or the dollars is that actually Bitcoin is a deflationary currency, whereas the euro is inflationary. What does that mean? And can you explain that a little bit more? And how can that impact actually in this system change, that climate change that we are kind of all aiming for? Tuur, I see you nodding.
Sure, yeah, I think I can speak to that. Yeah, so an inflationary system means that the supply of money constantly gets increased, and so therefore the value of whatever you want to buy in that money, sorry, the value of the money decreases over time because it gets diluted like a liquid. You just dilute it. And so in deflationary, what that means is that over time the value of the money is going to go up because the supply is scarce. And the reason why the value goes up is just because of technological progress. We make more sophisticated machines, and so we basically can buy more with the same amount of energy, the same amount of money. And the long-term effects, I think of this, are enormous. Because if you live in an inflationary economy like we live now, all of us have never known anything else growing up. What you are discouraged from doing is saving for the future, right? The thing that you're encouraged to do is to go into debt and to quickly go from one investment to the other, and then you get all these bubbles, of course, because you're trying to save in a way, but it's hard because the money itself is not fit for saving. Whereas if you think about a deflationary economy, which pretty much 19th century Europe, 19th century United States was a deflationary place. People were just saving their money in pretty much gold and gold certificates. And what you see then is, you can even see it in the architecture, is just that there is much more of a sense of longevity and long-term thinking, because you don't have to worry about your money evaporating. And there's more like multi-generational wealth. There's more, and so then you get buildings that actually stand after 300 years, after 500 years. Whereas in an economy where artificially a lot of the value goes to real estate, everybody's flipping houses, and the quality of the construction, and this is important for climate too, because apparently concrete itself is contributes to the greenhouse effect. And so there's just all kinds of ripple effects that come from living in an, and of course, if you want an extreme example, look at what happened in Russia in the 90s. Look at what happened in economies like Turkey, Venezuela, etc. Extreme inflation is completely destructive. Like those countries look like war zones after inflation. And so I'm very much in favor of moving away from that and giving young people a chance to actually save. And it's wonderful to be able to do that in hard money that will retain its purchasing power.
That's interesting, because one of the big critique that we give to the current system in which we live in, whether it's the economic system where we like to spend a lot all the time, right? Fast fashion and all those other things, consumption all the time, but also politics. We always criticize that it's too short-sighted, that people only look to the next election. So here, what you are saying is that actually this through with Bitcoin and through a deflationary economy, it will incentivize people to take a longer-term view. Which is an interesting point of view here. So Kris, like, how do you think that actually those technologies can actually be used? Because we talked before about the pollution aspect of it, and the fact that we need to compare to the existing system that has a lot of hidden costs in that term. But let's flip that. How can actually those technology be used to actually advance the cause for the climate emergency?
Yeah, sure. So I've not really worked in the Bitcoin space, in the sense that for the past 4 or 5 years, I've worked on the second biggest platform that most people have probably heard of, and that is Ethereum. And so Ethereum is like, if you understand that Bitcoin is like decentralized money, Ethereum is just like is another blockchain, and it works following the same system. And so on this system, you can build apps. We often call it decentralized apps, or dApps. And so I've witnessed, and I've also worked on a few of those over the past years, on a lot of these organizations that came into existence and that just started working on decentralized solutions that cannot be stopped, and that can support better, that it can come up with solutions that can also contribute to like limiting or reducing or reversing climate change. So I have a little bit of a cheat sheet that I will look at a little bit, but the first use case is a very simple one, and I can talk for hours about that one because I worked for it, and it's bringing actually transparent donations to the blockchain. So you could say, okay, if I give to a good cause, like I would like to see what happens, for example, to fight climate change. I want to see what happens with my funds from the beginning until the very end. Like, okay, they want to install solar panels in that little village. I want to see where that money goes. And if I see that those funds are not spent correctly, I can actually take those funds back and I can reallocate them. And all of that is possible because everything is fully transparently traceable with blockchain technology. And that's already a big change, this transparency. And this transparency you can like link to a lot of different things. I saw it somewhere. We can go into this later when it comes to like democratizing things and so on. But you can also use blockchain technology to really democratize voting on specific projects. But you can even go larger and think about organizations, but governments, and so on. And you can really bring transparency in how you make decisions on anything. You can bring transparency in recycling. Right now, how can you really see when I put my garbage outside if it's actually recycled and what happens from it on the entire supply chain from beginning to end? You can actually trace this with blockchain technology. Energy, you could.
Are there any like as of today in May 2021, like what are concrete applications that are already live and up and running? Because I understand that all of that is going to be possible technically, but like right now as we speak, like what is being done in the space actually to help the system change, not climate change?
Oh, well, yeah. So one of them is Giveth, the project I worked for. It's been live for 4 years. And you can just like, if you go to giveth.io, we'll share some links at the end, but you just go there and you can just say, create a project, you put your money in there and you start your cause, your good cause. That's one of them, but there's hundreds and hundreds of projects where you can just go there, join a community and start working on these. So another one, for example, is like peer-to-peer energy. You could actually, it's something I just read about, and there's already 2 or 3 projects that are actually live where you can say, okay, well, if we're producing local solar energy, why are these big companies involved? Blockchain technology is always about peer-to-peer. You cut out the middleman. That's the magic word. Cut out the middleman. I see people who are afraid of like, yeah, but like I'm a little bit afraid if I won't have a say anymore. Well, it's actually the opposite. You will have more say and you will be more directly involved. And you can do this for anything you can imagine. And actually all of these things exist in 2021. I can give links for any use case. If you give it, I can give some examples.
All right. Tuur, I see that you're raising your hand, but I wanted to give the question to you also because like you were experienced right in mining. And so really curious to see what do miners do right now as we speak today to reduce their CO2 footprint?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's what I wanted to say is relevant to your question. Before we break into groups, I did want to like kind of suggest, which I think is objectively true, that Bitcoin is, it's strange to say, but Bitcoin is carbon neutral. Like if you, just like an electric car, right? It's just a machine that needs electricity. And so it's nowhere defined how that electricity should be produced, with how it should be produced. And so, and one of the advantages that Bitcoin does have as a kind of a system compared to some other systems that are more political, where it's basically human powered and you have the energy need in urban centers. Bitcoin mining can happen literally anywhere on the planet. Like you can go to West Texas, where there's natural gas that is being flared off because it's too far from the civilized world. You can take that and you can convert it into Bitcoin mining. You can go to hydro plants in remote China that half the year are not used and just switch them on to mine Bitcoin in the low season. And so basically you have, it's a way to unlock stranded energy. Like, I think the notion that energy is something that is scarce is a bit of a myth. Like, you know, we don't utilize 99 point, I don't know how much, but over 99% of the solar energy that lands on our planet is not utilized by humanity. And so looking at Bitcoin as a way to unlock stranded energy, which by definition is going to be extremely cheap and is going to be away from urban areas, I think, if anything, that's a huge opportunity for green energy engineers, startups, companies to monetize their innovation, right? If you have a way to unlock energy somewhere in Siberia, you can do it. You don't need to wait for a pipeline or for energy electricity wires to go to Mongolia or wherever else. So that's just, you know, a suggestion that Bitcoin is actually carbon neutral.
So one of the and we have
Or
4 last minutes.
Call it that way.
So we have 4 last minutes, but the one thing that I really wanted to touch on is that one of the among the people who are naysayers about Bitcoin and stuff, they basically criticize the proof of work, right? Because as you explained before, it requires a lot of energy, right? And you can argue that you can actually use energy that is not being used, that is being wasted. But then people would say like, yes, but there is something else at Bitcoin, which is basically using what we call proof of stake, right? That uses much less energy. Can you talk about that in short?
Sure. Yeah. So proof of stake is this idea that it's saying like, well, okay, I understand that voting is kind of a vulnerable way of doing things, but if we tie the votes to how much coins you have in the system, like how much skin in the game you have, then maybe we can have a fair voting system. And my incentive, if I have a lot of coins, why would I want to sabotage my own system? That doesn't make sense. And so like all our incentives are aligned, and so we can have this voting system. It's the best of both worlds, right? We can eliminate the problems of fiat, and we can also not have to burn as much energy. And so and you know, many others, this has been debunked, I think, way back in 2013, 14, 15, is that proof of stake basically, and those systems have been proposed going back to the late 90s for digital currencies. Like, the big innovation of Bitcoin was proof of work. Like, proof of stake is kind of old sauce, or whatever you call it. And so but so the challenge with proof of stake is that there's many attack vectors. For example, if we have a proof of stake system, I can go in the market and I can borrow coins, and then I can use those borrowed coins to cast my vote and still attack the system, because it doesn't cost me a lot to borrow the coins in the market. So, and that's just one example. Like, there's just, you know, I don't have any interest. I don't have any shares anymore in any mining company. I don't have a personal interest in burning energy. I just think that it's the only way to really do it. The only other way is obfuscated proof of work, where it's like, yes, we are going to have work, but we're going to hide that there's actually energy being burned. Like, and that's what you see in these fiat systems, where they have a new commission and a new central bank and a central bank supervisory system. And so it just is this ever expanding bureaucracy, which is totally burning energy to keep everything stable. And it fails in the end anyway. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, why I am in favor of proof of work.
Thank you, Kris. And for the 2 last minutes, and then we'll go out to the breakout room and leave the mic back to Lane.
Yeah, so I am. I think in that I kind of knew that in advance, but so Tuur and I don't totally agree on the validity of proof of stake, because that is what's coming with Ethereum. The next version, which is called Ethereum 2, which is launching later this year, will run on proof of stake. And there's a lot of way more intelligent people who can talk about like why there is a valid use case for this. And I will definitely link some things about how you can fight these attacks. So indeed, like there are risks involved with changing this. But so the Ethereum ecosystem believes that it's possible to not do this. And once you switch to proof of stake, there is no more pollution. So that is also an important thing to know, that the Ethereum ecosystem will change to proof of stake in the nearby future. But we can talk about that later on as well.
yes, there will be more opportunities to.
Isn't that the beauty of all this, is that we can have all these experiments in real life and we'll just find out what happens. Like, it's incredible to me.
It's fantastic.
Actually, that's a good point, which is like often we tend to see the world as or and not and. And the fact that actually there could be multiple experiments running at the same time. And nobody has the monopoly of the truth. So a multiple experiment can run at the same time, and then we'll see the results. So you're gonna have like opportunities to ask more questions to Tuur and Kris, but like right now we're gonna leave into breakout rooms, but I'm gonna leave the word to Lane, who's gonna moderate all of that. So thank you so much, already, Tuur and Kris, for this first part of the presentation.
All right, it's really time to get into breakout groups. There's a couple of new people that came in. So just for them, the first half hour of this call was an interview with Xavier and Tuur and Kris, and have their opinion on it. But I saw that in the chat, there's already a lot of heated and quite worried reactions on what those two were saying. So that's why we are now going into breakout groups. You get about 15 minutes. There's an expert, Tuur, Xavier, and Kris will be all in one breakout group. The breakout groups are 5 to 6 people. There is also a report you can make. It would be super nice. I will put it in the chat. It would be super nice if you could ask one of the people in your breakout group to make a short report or type a little bit what you are talking about. You will see that there is a structure. We invite you to talk about the worries, about the no voices, right? What worries you when it goes, when the topic is blockchain technology, energy use, Bitcoin, etc.? What worries you about the topic? See you back in 15 minutes. Have fun. So I hope you had a great discussion in the breakout groups, and I would love to hear about it because I was not there, and it would be great to hear also from the groups what you've all been discussing. So I would like to welcome you to share a little bit on what you've been talking about in the breakout groups. Maybe group 1. So you've been discussing about concerns. Is there one participant of breakout group 1? That was the group with Tuur as an expert. Is there anyone who would like to share a tiny bit, give a little bit of a summary of the main concerns in that group?
I can try. The concerns that I heard was kind of like, what are the incentives built into, Bitcoin or the other cryptocurrencies, and are they desirable? Other concerns are like, basically, we need carbon, zero carbon emissions today. It's basically almost already too late. And so, this proof of work stuff is only making it worse. So it's not a good thing. Concerns is also that, well, we have alternatives to proof of work, so why don't we use those? That's also what I heard. Concerns about the motivations of people that are either have a lot of Bitcoin or that are, running large companies in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Like, what are their, moral principles, and like, do they have any? And is it basically repeating all the bad stuff of what came before? Maybe there's more. I those are the ones I remember right now.
Yeah, who wants to add something from group 1?
Well, we have a lot of other concerns. The main concerns, it's so correct for the list, but it's also to see if it is why we don't have there are advantages and disadvantages, but for the moment we see only the biggest disadvantages. And we don't speak about blockchain, and we connect it to Bitcoin, but perhaps it's not the same. There is a decentralized finance, but it's not the same. Steph spoke about it also of a change of system. So is the money the system, or is the system needing a money? And so if you want to change the money and not change the system, if you want to change the system, how you're going to change first the system from the money? So the questions are huge.
Okay, wow.
I would add one final thing from my personal experience. I've been working with crypto art for about 6 months now. And the main issue I thought was the lack of transparency from Bitcoin advocates. So I started selling works, and I was trying to get some information about the impact. And the main response you get is like, oh, it's carbon neutral, it's green, and it's pushing the renewables. And as soon as you start doing a bit of research, so I worked with universities and Offsetra and various companies, you realize that proof of work is nonsense, and a single Bitcoin transaction emits about 500 kilos of CO2. So this is more or less one transaction. So there's a lot of information out there, but unfortunately, the main advocates for Bitcoin are saying like, oh, don't worry about it. And it's mostly coal and gas and oil that are being burned in mining facilities in China and Kazakhstan and remote places, of course, where the coal is cheap. So transparency for me is a major issue. Last point, I'm pro blockchain. I work personally with proof of stake, and I want to develop my work around the blockchain, but not Bitcoin, because this is the worst nightmare we could possibly think of in terms of CO2 right now.
Maybe I'll just add, just kind of throw this in there in terms of like people wanting to read more. One source that I like and I think is reliable is Nick Carter, N-I-C, and his last name is Carter, C-A-R-T-E-R. And he has a Medium blog, and so when there's articles about mining and pollution, he'll often kind of go in and try to dig up some and it's true, it's hard to get all the facts because it's decentralized, but at least I found him to be reliable in terms of like a kind of a pro Bitcoin point of view on mining.
Just a small note, we are taking notes of all the articles, media, everything that is mentioned, YouTube channels, whatever. We're making a long list so that you have something to go home with if you do some extra reading. So we're taking note of that. Okay, group 2.
Yeah, so we yeah, a lot of valid concerns. So the first one is that it's not accessible. Many people are saying it's not accessible enough, and I totally agree. Many people are just either, they're building this, and communication, there's still a lot lacking in terms of communication. So that's why we're doing this. Then, can I trust this? Can I trust putting my money on the blockchain? What happens with it? That's another point. Another question was, is it a good thing actually? Because I mentioned this a few times also in the breakout, like the fact that you lose some oversight, and do we actually, and can we still like punish criminality and so on? Like, how do we deal with this? Another point was, is it really unstoppable? Another good point was like, is transparency always a good thing? Then we need checks and balances. Do we want to use renewable energy for mining? Are there not better use cases? Are we not replacing a bad system for a worse system? So loads of answers I can give to it, but I think we'll get into that in a minute. So that's from our group. Unless I missed anything, then other people in my group should say so.
I see a thumb there. That was it for group 2. All right, group 3.
So in our group, we talk about concern, but we also talk about actually the fact that there were actually a lot of concern with the current system, and the fact that actually a lot of euros and dollars have been printed, and only 10% of that money printed actually goes into the pockets of citizens, but most actually goes into the financial system and always to the same people. So there was a lot of concern about that, which I found was interesting. There was also what else? The concern about, and maybe that's something that Tuur can talk about, or Kris, about is it really true that every single transaction costs so much CO2 as Johnny is saying? you know, people were a bit scared, but then they thought that, oh, but maybe if it's within the same exchange, maybe it's not recorded on the blockchain, so actually it doesn't cost that much energy. So I don't know if you could, one of the experts can confirm that. And then also, like, one thing that I thought was interesting was interesting quote was that indeed it was interesting that to make money and as a way to say, like, yeah, I'm not as performing as a contributor to the world if I need to worry first about putting bread on the table. And I found that was an interesting way to look at this, as we talk about universal basic income and things like that. And then what else? There was also another concern about whether or not is it really true that we can update Bitcoin, because it feels like someone was comparing Bitcoin to Facebook, like it's too big to fail and we cannot change it anymore. Because if there is other chain, but because of the network effect, how much can we really change that? Oh, and last one was maybe like the concern was the lack of movement in the Bitcoin community to make a big statement like we're gonna go to carbon zero within X years or something like that. That they were concerned that there were too many like fundamentalists that were only preaching by the proof of work and didn't care about the ecological impact.
Okay. Any additions from group three? No. I see that there's a lot of articles coming up in the chat. That is great. So if there's more that come to your mind on the disadvantages, on the concerns on crypto and blockchain, please add them. We will make a reading list. And then we have actually time for one question, for one extra comment before I send you in the breakout groups. So if there's something burning.
I don't know if just like if Tuur, or I don't know, or do you want to see that, but to have a quick answer maybe to the concerns or from the experts.
I can
Sure.
briefly like it's more going to be kind of a general comment than addressing every concern, but I was thinking, like, yes, it's true. Okay, let it be revealed. Bitcoin is a terribly inefficient database. It's the worst database on the planet. It's so horrible. Like, you have to, like, there's thousands and thousands of copies of the same database all around the world, and they have to be like updated, and there's all these miners, like, you know, burning all that energy. Like, why? And the reason is it's censorship resistant, and the tokens are actually scarce. Those two combined are the only thing that Bitcoin offers. It cannot make our lives better. It cannot save the planet. It cannot do any of that. And so, and only people who like that stuff, who like censorship resistant, and I know people are saying like, oh, but like only rich people buy Bitcoin. This is patently false. Like, I know many people, I've traveled widely in Latin America and beyond, like many people in countries with horrible financial systems rely on Bitcoin, survive on Bitcoin. They use Bitcoin to send it to their families who live abroad, et cetera, et cetera. Like, the censorship resistant is very valuable to many people. Maybe not to us, maybe not today, that's okay. So it's one of those systems where it's like, if you like decentralization, censorship resistant, it's there to use it. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. But there is some truth in the fact, in the statement that it's money for enemies. Like, people who use it don't have to agree on almost anything. So it's just kind of a take it or leave it thing. Whereas the political money that we use today, if the government doesn't like you, they can shut down your bank account, and they do in many countries. So it's just one of the things that we'll see over time, like the value of actual scarcity and the value of censorship resistance. How much is the world gonna want that? We'll see.
Yeah, I can maybe add to that, because I think it's a very important point. I hear that Joni also in the chat before, like, and I think it's a valid point that people are getting very emotional about the pollution aspect. And it is an important thing, and nobody is saying this is not the case. But the fact that through technology we can bring systemic change that cannot be stopped. And we can talk about this later and more of like how unstoppable this really is, but it actually truly is. This can bring a lot of positive change for many, many people. in the world and also for our planet. And I think that is the big takeaway. How we get there is can be a lot of debate about this, but it is the systemic change that we have tried with activism in many ways that you actually now can do with technology that is unstoppable. And to me, that is the crazy thing that we should really focus on most of all, and that unites us, I would say.
I think that's a perfect gateway to the next round of breakout groups. It's 9:20, so let's do a 15 minutes on opportunities. I have not mingled breakout groups, but I moved the experts to another one so that you can tap in.
Lynn, I have one question. Like, do you want us to actually talk about these opportunities, or is it more like the people amongst us? Because I don't really know.
Okay, it would be nice if you had a conversation and if you would let everybody talk. So
yeah, that's what we try to do.
To mine a bit the intelligence that is there, or experiences more that are there about opportunities. Have you heard, what are the opportunities of crypto and blockchain? And then maybe you can respond a bit to that, but also let people respond to each other, because I'm sure that there's a lot of expertise already in the group.
Definitely.
Sorry to interrupt. I just looking at my calendar, and apparently I have a call that I have to be in right now. And it's my bad. Lena's been fantastic in putting all this together, but I had the time zone wrong, and I actually thought this call was going to be later today. But it was really a pleasure. I really appreciate it, and including like Jacopo, Wani, like everybody's input. Like it's important for us to keep talking, and I really appreciate all the frank and honest criticisms. So I hope to talk to you again sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lynn. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tuur.
Thank you for your time, Tuur.
Bye.
All right. See you, Tuur. Thank you.
See you.
Okay. What about I change? I have 3 breakout groups, which makes 5 for 5. What about I switch it to 2? Fabio, what do you think? And Kris?
Sure.
Is that okay? All right. So
you're the moderator.
Yeah, no, it's just
you're
also like
the chief.
Chief. Let's see how the group.
You're the centralized party, Lane. You have the power over us.
Power.
No, she's the people. She's the people DJ. You know, she's kind of
yeah, I better enjoy
mixing people together. It's an art.
I'll just leave it like this. I think it's gonna be fine like this. It's gonna take me 2-3 minutes, so I'll just leave it like this if that's okay for you.
We trust the process. In the process, we trust.
Yeah.
And in science, in math.
And in people, please. But I'll give you about 15 minutes to talk about opportunities, and then I'll see you back. I'm very curious about what you've discussed in these 15 minutes. Maybe we can start with group 2. Randomly. Is anybody of you interested in sharing a tiny bit on what you've been discussing in the last 15 minutes?
I think that was our group. I'm not sure, but I think we were group 2. So we did it.
Yes.
We just had actually just an interesting exchange of ideas, because not all of us are equally familiar, let's say, how things work. Mm-hmm. But I think what arose, or something interesting that I took away, let's say, is that we don't only have to think about Bitcoin, and so we also should really think about the other systems, and we should not only think about Ethereum for purely payment kind of things, but they could also be used purely for other things. And that is maybe escaping a bit the attention of at least people like me, who are not very deep into it, and probably many others who are more on the surface of it. But that's definitely something interesting I take away from the discussion we had.
Yeah, maybe just to add on to that, like we didn't really have the time and the opportunity to talk about this right now, but that is actually the world I've been living in for the past years. And the money use case is actually with decentralized finance a more recent one. And that's the one that is grabbing, of course, the attention of everyone. But so many projects are working on identity, on voting, on regenerative systems. I sent Lane a long mail with a lot of projects, so hopefully we can summarize some of these things, and I would love to help out on that, to send you some links, because there are so many, wow, fascinating projects that are coming into existence.
Great. Looking further than the money topic, crypto as money. Something else in group 2, somebody that wants to add something? Just go through my pages.
I think Elias made a fantastic summary of what we discussed.
Okay, thank you. Great. All right, group 1 maybe?
Yeah, so but opportunities. Well, first is what about one thing that came up was what about we learn from, okay, Bitcoin was nice, a great experiment. What about we learn from it and then start a new one? But there is actually like a Cambrian explosion of different blockchains happening right now. Not only Ethereum, but also like a lot of different holochain and other initiatives. And so I think it's great to see that, because we talk also how at the end, how governments actually, they're not necessarily bad, but they also, because they need to use this technology that we have that is fiat money, that should be upgraded. And so can we create new governments with new money? And I think an opportunity here is having a lot of different communities experimenting with different behaviors, money, and then creating new institutions on top of those. One quote that we share here was, so basically blockchain, all those technologies is like any technology, it's a hammer, and then you can use the hammer to build whatever you want. And we should move the conversation to okay, what do we want to do with that hammer?
Did you write that down in the report? It's indeed a very nice one.
I want to add a nuance. It doesn't necessarily have to be a hammer. I think we first need to see what we want to build, and then we need to see whether we want to use a hammer for that. Because what I keep on hearing in the conversation is like, it's like blockchain is a given. To me, blockchain is not a given. The currency or whatever else we want to build is an interesting thing to look at. And then afterwards, we can see whether blockchain is a good tool for it. But whenever I hear talks in communities that are talking about cryptocurrencies, the technology is the core. To me, the currency is the core, and for a currency, you do not necessarily need blockchain.
Yeah, so maybe I would like to add something to that if I understood it correctly. I do think like the technology is for me at the core. Sometimes a specific blockchain application can have a token linked to it, but this is not always the case. But again, to repeat, like what is the essence of blockchain technology is that it is unstoppable and it is transparent and it is decentralized. And then that is something that is a technologic advantage that you can do a lot with. The financial aspect can be a part of it, but finance is not the start. Finance is a consequence. For me, the start is a technology that you can just like put under existing systems and improve systems or replace systems slowly and gradually. But the start is not about the money. For me, the start is about a new technology that was not possible before.
Then we have a totally different way of approaching these things.
And that's the good thing, is that actually in the world, we can have different perspectives.
True. The last group 3. No, 1, I think. No, 3.
No, it's 3.
No, 3, yeah.
Well, I already talked a lot, so maybe someone else from group 3 wants to maybe summarize what we talked about. If not, I can do it.
I can do it if you want.
Mathieu? Yes, please.
I'll try to do my best at least. So we first talked about the fact, well, a fact, I don't know, but at least a tweet that I read some weeks ago, that Bitcoin is the most efficient way to transform energy into prosperity for all. So it's a bit of a provocative thought, but the discussion around that is how to summarize that. That today, to create prosperity, you have so much steps from energy into prosperity for some, actually. and that maybe Bitcoin is, or at least different cryptocurrencies are probably the most efficient ways to transform this energy directly into prosperity for all. Think about the projects around universal basic income, and also the fact that Emmanuel was talking about opportunities for maybe smaller town or smaller groups of people to create coins that they exchange together and kind of compensate for the negative externalities of the current system. If I summarize a little bit what we've been discussing. What else? We talked also about the new stable coin called RAI, R-A-I, which is unlike the USDT, which is linked to the US dollar and therefore deflates as well over time. This one is linked to itself. It's kind of a stable coin that is stable by design, something like that. And then we also talked about the Decoodt network and the opportunity of generating prosperity or resources out of nowhere by copying the same transaction that skillful traders are doing. So in the Decoodt network, it seems that you can actually basically copy, when you have the address of a trader, you can copy all the transactions the same way as he does with your own address or something like that. This means that you could generate or help generate for projects money out of nowhere in this using these wallet copying opportunities. What else? Yeah, money as a mean of expression. That was the first one, but I don't remember what we said there. Can someone help? Maybe
I think that was from the previous, like from the first part, because I was already there, I saw.
For the last round, I would ask you, what have you learned today? Since there's only 12 of us left now, I'm gonna do a round, but you only get 30 seconds, and I wanna listen to a couple of words, just a couple of words on what you learned. One thought, one tiny something.
I still would like to learn something.
Mathieu, you want to go first? So yeah, so as a checkout, it's Mathieu that's talking, no?
Oh, Vincent.
It was Vincent, excuse me, sorry. So we're gonna do a round of all the participants. Vincent, you can totally start, and we just want to hear in like 30 seconds something that you've learned today. So something that you, or something that you want to learn extra is fine as well. And you can start, and at the end you can pass on the word to somebody else.
Okay. I discovered some really nice projects for a better world thanks to the cryptocurrency, and that was a good takeaway for tonight already. I'm still wondering if my internal transaction within Binance are costing as much energy, because I think they are not written in the blockchain. That's all for me. Thanks for the meeting. I would like, if I hope there will be more.
Oh.
Yeah.
You can pass on the word to something.
Yes, Jacopo Joe, because I didn't see you for a long time, and it's a pleasure to see you tonight.
Ciao, Vincent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, but for me, I didn't learn anything, because I am, I think, at least at this level. So I am involved with the energy, so I didn't learn anything. I already wrote all the answers to the problem that are repeated and repeated. So the discussion is already settled. The consequences and the advantages are known. So for me, it's a known. It's interesting to see that people are different in a way. There are new projects. I will like to learn the project from Steph. So if you put the link, I will try to learn about that. And so I will sell the next to Jonas. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's very interesting to see all the point of view and Because I'm in the crypto ecosystem for the last 7 months, like full time, I think it's a really good thing to step aside and see all the point of view, because I'm kind of always with the crypto environment. So I kind of see only the good things about crypto. And so that's a really interesting things to like just, yeah, step aside and see all the point of view of the people and see what's the concerns and stuff like that.
You can pass on the word, Jonas.
Yeah. So next one will be Mathieu.
Thanks, Jonas. Yeah, I learned through the different links that were shared in the chat. So thanks, Lane, for capturing them all and sharing it with everyone. What I learned is that also when you run this type of discussion, I think I evaluate that maybe 90% of us are all crypto enthusiasts and also concerned by the climate emergency, of course. But I didn't hear too many critics, and maybe you could find, there are many critics out there from the mainstream media and other streams, but tonight at least we couldn't hear these voices as strongly as the ones who see opportunities. So yeah, I don't know. I felt that maybe there is a need to find even more balanced perspective. But I think it's also linked to the fact that we don't fully know everything about the environmental impact and energy impact of these cryptocurrencies. So there is more work to be done, more research to be done to be, to better manage the risk and mitigate it. That's kind of my learning of tonight.
You can pass the word, Mathieu.
Sure, sorry. Pass it to Emmanuel.
Nothing very new. I think what's very good for this kind of discussion is that you can grasp the feeling of different people, how they feel about different subjects. I think in this group everybody see the usefulness of crypto or blockchains as possible future enabler for a lot of things. Not everybody sees the same value on what we can do or what we should do with those let's say system of technologies. And I think everybody, let's say, still is happy on the premises, even looking at the cost for the moment, so the energy cost at least. But okay, I stay somewhat pessimistic regarding the energy consumption because there is too much money or too much promise, I would say. So the balance is difficult, I think, to maintain. Oh, I should pass the word to Bart, I think.
Merci, Emmanuel. Yeah, hi. Well, it's great to be here with all of you and to get all these different impressions and learning from different views and opinions. As for me, it's been 5 years since I've watched the documentary on Netflix on Satoshi, and that seems like a really long time ago. And time has really passed and time has flown, and now I'm here with you people and discussing about Ethereum and all the applications. And what I would say is that I can't express how uncertain and how newbie I feel in this whole ecosystem. Like there's so much being developed, and I'm just at the tip of the iceberg. So definitely a lot of learning for me to go. And I do think there's a lot of potential. I mean, this is evolutions like this can only be seen as catalysts in bigger changes. I mean, since when do we have the internet? The human genome was just decoded about 20 years ago. So this is the next step. It could be. So very excited to see to watch this space continue. I'll give the word to Nicholas.
Was it Xavier who made the quote of the comparing the blockchain to a powerful hammer, and we should ask the question of what we built with it? And I think that's one of my takeaways. I got more convinced of the potential for good today, but also more convinced of the risks. And yeah, I just hope that we take enough time to think about what we are building before with the best intention in the world, we build something which is not so good and which we cannot get rid of. Yeah, I should read more because it's very technical and very, very subtle.
For the record, it was a quote of Steph, but I was just
okay.
reporting.
Thank you, Steph.
Giving credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
Nicholas, you can pass on. Or
yes, let's pass on to Elias.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nicola. Yeah, since I'm also not really in the crypto space, I too learned that I need to learn much more. I'm definitely not positioned to have a very well balanced opinion maybe on it. But what I do find very interesting is that these discussions and these questions that come up forces also to reevaluate how we deal with money, how we deal with institutions, how we deal with democracy. And so just already that exercise, that this new technology forces all of us to rethink about these things and not just take our current ways of working for granted. I think that's already very valuable. And then if we use Bitcoin or Ethereum to replace it, or it will be something else in the end, that for me, that comes on a second place. Yeah, so that's a bit my main takeaway of tonight. I think we didn't hear yet from Steph.
I really enjoyed this evening. It's I really enjoyed the open discussion. I admit I am very skeptical towards cryptocurrencies as a technology. Actually, what I take away from this evening is there is room for conversation. There is room for discussion, and there is room for exploring possible alternatives. And that makes me really happy because I have to admit my expectation was that it would have been a whole bunch of crypto enthusiasts and me. And that would have led to a totally different experience. So I just want to thank you all for the openness and for listening to my adverse opinions. I'll put it that way. Thanks.
I think we still have Isabel and Joel.
Yeah, I'll pass it to Isabel. We haven't. She's the only woman in the group, and I think we should hear from her.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a newbie to Bitcoin, so today I learned that many people want many things from Bitcoin. Some want the decentralized aspect of it, some wants the energy efficiency part of it, or some wants the sort of better monetary policy that might come with it. So, and all this possibility seems at the moment to me like somewhat incoherent, but maybe because we're just at the beginning. So who else hasn't spoken? I think
me.
Who?
So Joel, me.
Joel. Oh, hi, Joel. Yes, go ahead then.
So yeah, I think it's really important to bring more people to the discussion, like decentralize the communication about it, like because it's kind of only the beginning, and there's a lot of potential in different, not only just in Bitcoin, and but a lot of things will fail, I think, but a few will probably thrive, and I'm really curious to see this happening. Yeah, that's it. I think we're over time already.
Yeah, Xavier, you haven't checked out yet, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thank you everyone for participating. I think it's super interesting to have different point of view and it's good to what I love about those people assembly is the opportunity to get out of our social media bubbles where we only get confirmation of what we think. And so I think it's really healthy, and we should do that more on various different topics. One thing I learned today was actually that Bitcoin from Tuur was that Bitcoin as a deflationary currency can actually help people think more long-term compared to our very short-term thinking across society today that we have, which is something that I didn't realize. And I will have to think more about it. Yeah, so, and also like, I love also through those experiences, like how much like we don't need to convince each other. No one has the monopoly of the truth, and different experiments can be run at the same time. And I just read this quote today that I find is kind of funny. It's ironic, right? The bee doesn't waste its time trying to convince the fly that honey is better than shit. Right? The point is not about, you know, who is the bee and who is the fly. The point is that we all like different things, and all those different things have a place in the universe. And we just all help each other to run experiments so that we can learn. And Lynn?
Yes, what I've learned is that we have to find a way to reach out to more women. Because yeah, it's a bit of a male group. And for the rest, yeah, I resonate a bit what I thought Steph was saying about, do we all need this? Is this a need to have or a want to have all this technology? And shouldn't we also just dig a bit deeper into a bit more of a basic, what do we need in life to have a happy life? And is that technology? So I also dive a bit deeper, but that's a more of a philosophical question, I think. Voilà, so I thank you very, very, very much to just be here today, to be open-minded.
Did we hear Jonas yet?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we did. You're gonna be able to double check that in the video.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So voilà, no, thank you very much for being here. What can you expect from us? You're gonna get a follow-up email with the report of today, with a reading list that has gotten longer because of all the things that you've shared in the chat. We are really planning on organize more of these people assemblies. If you have ideas on topics, we would love to hear about that. Can be crypto again, can be anything else. We also have a collective on Open Collective. So if you wanna support us a little bit, I will add the link where you can do a tiny donation if you would like to. And if you love this to keep on going, that would be amazing. But I wish you a very, very good night. Don't leave your sleep on cryptocurrencies and blockchain, but fall asleep smooth and safely. And voilà. We hope to see you next time.
Thank you very much for the good moment. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
See
Good
you.
night, everyone. Bye.